Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be joined by David Heacock, the founder and CEO of Filterbuy, who has built the world's leading indoor air quality company from the ground up and bootstrapped what is now a more than $250 million business. I can't wait to dive in. You may have seen David on Forbes, Entrepreneur, Bloomberg, and the New York Times. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So let's go back in time. I believe in your prior life, you had a high-paying Wall Street job, which you left to take over a struggling factory. Tell us a little bit about the Wall Street journey and why you left.
Yeah, so I'm from Talladega, Alabama originally, which is a town of about 9,000 people or so that really rose during the textile industry and then fell with the textile industry. So I was in a family business that was textile related and saw it basically get decimated in the 90s with NAFTA. And I made the logical decision to get as far away as I possibly could, and ultimately found myself with a job at Goldman Sachs in New York, where I ran the emerging market options trading business. Did that through the financial crisis and had a lot of great experience and a lot of interesting experiences doing that. But in 2012, my family was going through the sale of what was left of the family business, which was largely in the wood products supply industry at the time. And my grandfather, who was at the end of his life, really did not want to see it sold and leave the family. And I, on a whim, decided to quit my job and purchase it and see what I could do with it. I had no idea really what I was signing up for or what I was going to do with it, but ultimately built what is now Filterbuy on top of that. So that's the very long story short.
Yes. And let's dive in to the longer version of that story. What was the factory originally in, and how did it end up being in the air quality business?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a factory. It was a distribution business.
Oh, sorry,
basically,
distribution.
We were buying and selling supplies needed for the wood products industry, like sawmills and things like that. So we were selling like the chemical that treats wood for molding, or sawmill blades and chipper parts and this kind of stuff. And so we had a sales force that was in their 60s on average. It was a small dying distribution business. And I realized pretty quickly that it was not going to survive in that form. So I started looking for a product that I could manufacture competitively in Talladega and sell direct to consumer, because in the early 2010s, direct to consumer was all the rage. And so you had a lot of companies like Dollar Shave Club and Harry's Razor and these types of companies. And I was just looking for a product that would fit that mold, where I could actually manufacture it myself and ship it to the end user, with the idea that then you'd have a sustainable business model. And to me, that meant being able to actually manufacture the product. You look at most brands today that call themselves direct to consumer is really taking product from an overseas manufacturer, putting a label on it and reselling it. But I would actually look for a product we could actually manufacture. And because air filters are so bulky and there's so much variation in practice of sizes and this kind of stuff, they're really logistically complex, and that was what I viewed as a competitive advantage long term if we were able to make them. And today I would tell you I'm really in the logistics business, not the air filter business. We just are a logistics company that happens to sell air filters. That's because really the magic is in getting it to the end user, because we're making a product for $2 on average and selling it for 13. And the difference there is unfortunately not profit. It's the cost of actually getting that product to an end user. And that's really where we specialize.
That makes a lot of sense. So with that system, you could really be in more businesses than just the indoor air quality business then, correct?
Yeah, it's part of the reason why I've started being so public about what we do. And I launched what's called Filter By Ventures, which is my holding company. Like ultimately, our core competency is in like the logistics side of the business as well as the manufacturing part of the business. And I'm interested in ultimately purchasing other businesses or partnering with other businesses where we can use our expertise to grow their distribution more or less. It's like one of those things is third-party logistics businesses are something that we're actively looking at because we do have a lot of logistical capabilities that are quite unique that I think that can be applied to other industries, particularly in what I would call oversized or difficult to ship products, like really small stuff. Amazon and whatnot has a big advantage in their last mile delivery, but anything that they would classify as oversized is generally where we specialize and we spent most of our energy building out.
What type of systems and leadership shifts do you have to make to scale a $250 million company? I would imagine you have to constantly keep reinventing things because you probably keep breaking things as you grew so fast.
Yeah, like I view a business as just a set of systems that, when working, get you a consistent desired result. And as you're changing, those systems definitely have to change. When I first bought what was TMS, that distribution business, we had about 12 employees, give or take, and now we have about 1,000. So there's obviously a lot of changes that have to take place in order for that to happen. And for me as an entrepreneur, I've had to change a lot and still constantly am having to change and have done better in some aspects than others. But in the last few years, I've really thought about the business operating system that we employ, and we have our own unique way of doing it. But there are books like Traction or the Rockefeller Habits that I think were very impactful for me in thinking about just organizational structure and how to bring a team to get a desired result. And like I've heard you mention, and I appreciate it, about building the world's leading indoor air quality company. But that was really something that came out of thinking through what kind of organization did I want to build. You have to be, in my opinion, mission driven, and you have to be very clear about what your values are. And when you go through when you go through any of these kind of organization systems, you realize why they're important. And it's something that we've really focused on in the last few years as kind of a part of growing our impact and bringing in management teams that are all aligned on a given mission.
You've experienced some fascinating ups and downs along the way. What's one thing that almost killed your business?
Yeah, I think that when you're an entrepreneur and with big ambition, like you constantly go from feeling like things are wonderful and you're taking on the world to next day thinking you're going out of business. And that's what you sign up for when you go on one of these journeys. So there are many things I could point to. COVID was definitely the most formidable and like one of the inflection points for us as a business, because there's so much uncertainty when something like that happens, and you have supply chain uncertainty, employee uncertainty, like not sure if people are going to show up to work. And then I remember distinctively in April of 2020, we were told by both FedEx and Amazon in the same month that FedEx was going to limit the number of trailers we were able to ship, and Amazon actually shut down the ability to send in third-party product to their fulfillment centers, something that they like to not talk about now. But in the height of COVID, they basically said we're going to shut off all third-party sellers from using our
FBA?
for our no FBA. They shut it down for, I don't know, a month or 45 days or something like that. And we're only dealing with first-party sellers. And at the time, we did not have we had only one location. We were only in Talladega. And that was an inflection point where I had to make a decision of how am I going to deal with this? And that's ultimately what led me to opening our Utah distribution center and about our manufacturing facility in under 2 months. That was up and running by July of 2020. And now we have 7 centers throughout the country. That's just an example that I think about often, where I basically had a decision point. Like a lot of our competitors at the time just really raised pricing and did their best to maximize short-term profitability in those periods while staying alive, whereas we ultimately use it as an opportunity to expand our footprint and to really go all in on building what we have today. And I think that business is just a series of those types of decisions that you're faced with, but that was one of the biggest. And we wouldn't have the business today that we have if we hadn't made that decision.
That makes a lot of sense. If you had to start over again, what's the first move you would make?
I definitely would not start a manufacturing business from scratch without any industry experience or knowledge. That was a very hubristic thing in retrospect, and it took me a lot of years of pain to overcome that. I recommend to early entrepreneurs either buy a small business that you want to then expand, because when you do that, you buy a lot of institutional knowledge that that they probably take for granted, and it gives you a great starting point if you're able to do that. If you're not able to do that either because you can't afford it or find the right opportunity, then oftentimes going and getting experience in whatever industry it is that you're looking to actually build on, I think is super critical and important, because it can just save you so much time and energy, because oftentimes industries evolve in certain ways for a reason. And if they evolve that in a certain way, that doesn't mean it's perfect, but you need to at least understand the kind of reasons why things are evolving that way, because oftentimes there's some structural thing behind it. And anyway, so if I was early on, I would make sure I was getting experience before going all in on something. And I think that I had a lot of early brain damage that took me years to get to where I was going, that I could have circumvented if I had either bought something or gotten some experience before building.
Absolutely. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes founders make when trying to scale?
I think trying to move too quickly and diversify too quickly is almost always the biggest problem. It's something I certainly suffer from at times. Entrepreneurs have a tendency to chase shiny objects, whereas focus is almost always the answer. Certainly has been for me, and it's oftentimes in more narrowly focusing on your niche or whatever it is your marketing channel or whatever it is, rather than trying to go so broad. And I think that early entrepreneurs need to go out and really find one model, one sales channel, one offer that works, and stick with it longer than they generally do before moving on to something else. And I think that every time I've subtracted in my business, I've actually been better off, narrowing focus, narrowing niche. And I think that it's so easy to say, hey, you want to be able to go out at a cocktail party and say you're doing 10 different things at once, when the reality is you'd be better off focusing on the one thing you know is working, or know that has the potential to get to some type of scale, and stick with that longer than maybe you're comfortable before moving to the next sales channel or the next product offering or whatever the case might be. So I think focus is ultimately the key to success.
That makes a lot of sense. Running a business requires a large degree of intestinal and emotional fortitude. How do you deal with the fear, the setbacks, the adversity, the ups and downs, and managing the stress every day?
To me, I think it's zooming out a little bit and having a long-term focus. I think that I say often, really to remind myself, that people consistently overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. And when you zoom out far enough, then any little blip doesn't seem so traumatic. And I think that just having that perspective is super important. It's not always easy. So many of the things some of the problems that we deal with day to day, we will not even remember a year from now, or much less 10 years from now. And I think having that perspective is super important, but then also like, you have to know generally the direction where you're going in the macro. And I think that as long as you can stay consistent with that general direction, that then the short-term hiccups, while annoying, ultimately are not going to bring you down too much. You're going to be able to keep the kind of the positive momentum in the macro. And I think just having that perspective is super important and certainly helpful for me.
Absolutely. What inspired you to start Filter Ventures?
I'm moving to the next stage of my entrepreneurial journey. I'm 42 years old, and in the last couple of years, I've thought, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Do I want to sell this business and kind of live happily ever after, or what is it? And for me, I absolutely love what I do, and I want to continue to build and compound my business and my impact. And in order to do that, I'm not going to be able to do it alone. I'm going to need to partner with other individuals and other businesses and buy other businesses and whatever the case might be. And so for me, Filter by Ventures is ultimately my mechanism for doing that and expanding our scope through partnership with other people.
What do you look for in a business that you're interested in partnering with?
First of all, it has to be in my circle of competence, which, as I said earlier, is generally within the e-commerce, logistics, or manufacturing, that kind of general bucket. And there's a lot of things that can do that. Or within the service-based business, we actually have an HVAC service business that we own that we are scaling called Filter By HVAC Solutions that we believe we ultimately will take nationwide. So it's ultimately stuff that fits within those buckets. And then it's really finding people that have gotten to a certain step or certain level that we can use our resources to really amplify that and take it to the next level. And so it's really finding the entrepreneurs that are ready for that, as well as the kind of businesses that fit those general molds. So it's a combination of personal fit, because we are looking for other people that are willing to continue to run them generally with our resources and guidance. That is really what we're looking for.
Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
Oh, I view it as a creative outlet. I view entrepreneurship as a creative outlet, and I absolutely love it. It's like my blank canvas to go out and build my own unique business, and that is unique to me. And so I love that challenge, and I love the creativity that comes with that of building. And every week, every month, every year, slightly different challenges and new opportunities but new challenges to overcome and hills to climb, and that's what makes it so fun and energizing, I think.
100%. We know your time is incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. For our folks who are watching and listening and want to learn more, where is the best place for them to go to learn more about you, about Filterbuy, about Filter Ventures, about everything?
Yeah, I'm David Filterbuy on every platform. We started publishing last October on YouTube. We do weekly videos. David Filterbuy on YouTube is probably a great starting point. But if you want to contact me, filterbyventures.com, and there's a contact form, and we look at everything that comes in.
All right. We greatly appreciate your time. This has been Seth Greene with Sharkpreneur and David Heacock from Filter By. David, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Seth. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.